Spoilers ahead, let's get to it. Today we are going to be talking about The Jacket. The film opens with Jack Starks, Adrian Brody, as an active soldier in the Gulf War in 1991. His voiceover tells us that he was 27 the first time he died. While on duty, a young boy ambushes him and he is shot in the head. We move forward a year and he is clearly a loner. We see him hitchhiking along a snowy road. He encounters a broken down pickup truck with a young mother named Jean Price, Kelly Lynch, clearly under the influence of drugs and/or alcohol, and a young girl about 8 or 10 years old. The mother is too strung out to know what's going on, stumbling around in the snow near the truck, intermittently vomiting. The girl, meanwhile, is happy to talk to Jack, who offers to try to fix the truck. The girl sees his army dog tags attached to his bag and asks what they are. He says they're dog tags with his name on them, so he won't get lost. The girl asks, can she have them? And he gives them to her. After tinkering around with the engine, he asks the girl to try the ignition and the truck starts. At this point, Jean comes to and in her stoned reverie becomes enraged, deciding that Jack is some kind of pervert despite the girl's protestations that he fixed the truck. She bundles the girl into the car and they drive off. Jack continues to walk and is later picked up by a man in a car some miles from the Canadian border. After a few minutes of driving, the car is pulled over by a policeman. We don't see what happens at this point in the narrative, but next thing we know, Jack is on trial for the murder of the cop, and cannot remember anything from the day in question apart from the mother and the young girl, who the authorities have been unable to trace. Jack is found guilty, but insane, and sent to an asylum run by Dr. Thomas Becker, Chris Christopherson. We are introduced to Dr. Beth Lorenzen, Jennifer Jason Lee, who also works in the asylum. We later see that she is attempting to offer occupational therapy for the disabled son of a friend, but her success is minimal. This takes place in her home and is not information Jack is privy to. One night, Jack is pumped full of drugs by the staff, placed in a straitjacket, and put in a mortuary drawer. Here, he experiences several rapid-cut flashbacks to his past, including the war and the incident with the policeman, but not enough to assist piecing together what happened. The next time they try to put him in the drawer, he feigns acquiescence to lull the staff into a false sense of his cooperation, but then assaults Dr. Becker, striking him in the face and injuring his cheek. In his next session, Jack finds himself transported to outside a dinner late on Christmas Eve. Jackie Price, Keira Knightley, leaves work in the diner, pulls up and offers him a lift, explaining that he won't get a cab on Christmas Eve standing there. She takes him home and it is apparent that she drinks heavily and lives an isolated life. When she takes a bath, Jack rummages around the fridge and ends up making them some toasted sandwiches. Jackie tells Jack that her mother died some years before, having passed out with a cigarette in her hand and subsequently burned to death. Looking around her place, Jack discovers his dog tags and asks her how she got them. Jackie becomes concerned when Jack tries to explain that they are his. Up to this point, we have no idea what year we are in, but a cursory glance at some bank statements reveals that Jack is now in 2007. Unable to explain to himself how this has happened, but completely convinced that he has somehow shot forward in time and met the grown-up girl, Jack tries to explain to Jackie who he is. Attempting to convince her by giving details about the day he met her and her mother with the pickup truck, information which, as he says, there's no way he could know just by looking at the dog tags. An incredulous Jackie is adamant that he can't be who he claims to be, as he died on January 1st, 1993 as a result of a head wound, although she has no further information on this. Already emotionally unstable, Jackie becomes hysterical and demands he leave. Jack does so and wakes up back in the drawer in 1992. Jack now needs to get into the drawer on a nightly basis in order to piece together what's going to happen to him on January 1st, 6 days away. Returning to 2007, Jackie now believes Jack and agrees to help him. Jack needs to find out what happened to him, so in order to explain the uncanny similarity to his own self from 15 years earlier, he poses as his own nephew and visits Dr. Beth Lorenzen with Jackie. During the visit, he learns of her use of electroshock therapy on the boy she looked after, but they learn nothing of the circumstances in which he died. While at the hospital, Jack encounters a patient who had been an orderly there when he was undergoing the jacket mortuary drawer treatment and who is now suffering from dementia. Jackie and Jack have sex for the first time, but Jackie wakes up alone the next morning, Jack having been sucked back to 1992 by his removal from the drawer. During one of his episodes in the drawer, we see what happened the day the policeman was killed. Pulled over by the cop, the driver of the car shoots him. Jack gets out of the car, incredulous. As the cop slumps back into the snow, he fires a shot which strikes Jack by accident. The driver continues to fire at the cop, killing him. He then wipes his gun clean and throws it into the snow near the now unconscious Jack before driving away. Jack is incriminated and sent to the asylum. On his next visit to the future, Jack confronts Dr. Becker, now an old man, convinced that he knows what became of him on January 1st, 1993, but Becker cannot help. Jack asks Jackie what her address was in 1992, i.e., when he met her as a child on the roadside, and she tells him. Driving away, Jack disappears from the back seat of Jackie's car and returns to 1992. Back in 1992, Jack manages to convince Dr. Beth Lorenzen that he has seen the future by telling her that she told him she used electrotherapy on the young boy. She doesn't believe him, as she says that such practices would not be used on so young a patient, but he says that she will eventually come to realize that this is the only way to help the boy. Brody explains that the boy is effectively in a constant fit and that Beth just hasn't realized this yet. Due to her lack of success with the boy up to this point, she takes a chance on Jack's assertion as to the electrotherapy. She applies a very low-frequency, short burst to the boy, which has instant success. Now that she believes Jack, she agrees to his request to deliver a letter to Gene Price. Beth smuggles him out of the asylum to drive him out to Jackie Price's childhood home, i.e., where she lived in 1992-1993. Arriving at the house, the girl recognizes him from the day he fixed the truck. He asks to speak to her mother. Having already learned that Jean will pass out one day with a cigarette in her hand and burn to death from the resulting fire, Jack gives her a letter warning her of this. Returning to the asylum with Beth that evening, Jack slips on the ice and hits his head, causing his fatal head wound. Asylum staff place him into the drawer before he dies, allowing him to return to 2007. As he is standing outside the diner, Jackie pulls up in the VW Beetle and offers him a lift. We assume that she recognizes him. Although, in the altered future, he would not have explained to her how he is to be there, completely unaged 14 years from the last time they met. All the previous experiences never happened for Jackie after Jack handed her mother the letter. As they are driving away, Jackie's mother calls her on the phone, in the altered future having, we assume, been convinced by Jack to believe the contents of the letter. Jean presumably has cleaned up her act so that in the improved 2007 she is still alive and is apparent that she has a strong relationship with her no longer dysfunctional daughter. In the final shot, Jackie asks Jack, "How long do we have?" And they drive off together in the strains of "We Have All the Time in the World." Bringing us to the end of the movie. Comment below what you think. If you haven't already, like and subscribe.